Have you ever wondered how the United Kingdom came to be? Why England, Scotland, Ireland, and Wales, four unique lands with different languages, cultures, and histories, are part of one kingdom today? It's not a simple story. It's a journey through ancient tribes, Roman invasions, Viking raids, royal marriages, rebellions, religious wars, and independence movements. Each of these four nations has its own proud identity, and yet, over time, they've been pulled together. Sometimes by force, sometimes by choice. So sit back and let's travel through time together to understand how these nations were shaped, how they clashed, and how they eventually became part of what we now call the United Kingdom. Now let's begin. But first, let's go back to where it all began. Before kings ruled and empires rose, the British Isles were alive with ancient Celtic tribes. These early people lived in small communities, built wooden forts on hilltops, and worshipped nature through sacred groves and stone circles. In what is now England, ancient tribes such as the Iceni and Trinovantes established vibrant communities. In the mountainous regions of Wales, the Celiars and Ordovices lived with pride and resilience. Further north, Scotland was inhabited by the independent-spirited Caledonians. Across the sea, Ireland was shaped by powerful Gaelic clans, deeply rooted in tradition and cultural heritage. They spoke different Celtic languages, honored warrior chiefs, and passed stories through songs and memory. They didn't leave behind books, but they left clues, tools, pottery, and sacred sites like Stonehenge that speak of a spiritual and connected world. Though separate, these tribes shared a rich culture tied to nature and community. Their legacy is still felt in local folklore, place names, and the surviving Celtic languages of today. In 43 AD, the Romans landed in southern Britain, bringing with them the might of the Roman Empire. They conquered much of England and parts of Wales, building roads, cities, and walls. Londinium, modern-day London, was one of their key centers. Roman baths, straight roads, temples, and villas began to appear across the land. They introduced Latin, Roman law, coins, and even Christianity. But the conquest wasn't complete. In Wales, the mountain tribes kept fighting. In Scotland, the Romans met fierce resistance from the Caledonians. Unable to conquer the north, Emperor Hadrian ordered a massive wall built, Hadrian's Wall, to mark the edge of Roman rule. That wall still stands today. Ireland, meanwhile, was never invaded. It remained outside Roman control, keeping its tribal structure and ancient traditions. So while Rome changed parts of the Isles forever, it also highlighted the sharp cultural differences between these four regions. After Rome's fall in the 400s AD, Britain was left vulnerable. Soon, waves of new settlers arrived. The Angles, Saxons, and Jutes, Germanic tribes from northern Europe. They forced the native Britons to move west into places like Wales and Cornwall. The new settlers brought their own languages, traditions, and beliefs. Over time, they set up several small kingdoms across what is now England, such as Wessex, Mercia, and Northumbria. Each had its own king and laws. But after many years of war and alliances, these kingdoms eventually joined together to form one larger kingdom. That kingdom became known as England. But then came another wave, the Vikings from Scandinavia. Starting in the 800s, they raided, settled, and reshaped the Isles. They controlled parts of England under the Danelaw, founded cities in Ireland like Dublin, and took over northern Scottish islands like Orkney and Shetland. These Norse settlers mixed with locals, leaving their mark on names, languages, and laws. This era was one of constant change, as cultures clashed and blended. Out of the chaos, new kingdoms and identities began to rise. By the 1000s, England had grown into a unified and influential kingdom. Its monarchs ruled from London, and the nobility managed expansive estates across the land. A major turning point came in 1066, when William of Normandy successfully claimed the English crown. His arrival introduced the French language, feudal customs, and a new noble class, weaving England more deeply into the fabric of European politics and culture. As England's influence grew, it naturally turned its attention toward its neighbors, Wales, Scotland, and Ireland, each with rich traditions and distinct identities, were increasingly drawn into England's expanding orbit. English monarchs asserted claims over these lands, leading to a long and complex history of conflict, negotiation, and cultural exchange. While England possessed greater military strength and economic resources, the neighboring nations maintained a strong sense of self, shaped by centuries of heritage. Now that we've explored England's early development, let's turn to the enduring story of Wales. Wales is a land known for its resilience. Despite its smaller size, it resisted outside control with great determination. Visionary leaders such as Llewellyn the Great and Owain Glyndwr rose to defend Welsh autonomy, language, and legal traditions. In the late 1200s, however, England initiated a powerful campaign under King Edward I, who built monumental castles, like Conwy and Carnarvon, to establish royal presence in the region. By 1284, Wales was officially incorporated into the English crown. As a symbolic gesture, Edward conferred the title Prince of Wales upon his son, a custom that continues to this day. Yet, even under external governance, the spirit of Wales remained strong. Its people preserved their poetry, language, and cultural expressions. Today, a renewed focus on the Welsh language, national music, and cultural celebrations testifies to the vitality of a nation that has preserved its soul across centuries. Next, we journey north to the breathtaking highlands and history-rich cities of Scotland. Scotland has long cherished its independence. In 1297, William Wallace led a courageous stand for Scottish sovereignty, an act that has inspired generations. Following his sacrifice, another figure emerged, Robert the Bruce, whose leadership continued the pursuit of Scottish self-rule. He became King of Scotland, and in 1314 he led the Scots to a legendary victory at the Battle of Bannockburn. That battle forced England to recognize Scotland's independence. For the next 300 years, Scotland remained its own kingdom, with its own kings, laws, and language. But tension with England never fully disappeared. There were times of peace and times of war. Scotland looked to Europe for allies, often siding with France against England. Despite pressure and conflict, Scots held tightly to their own traditions and national pride. Castles, Highland clans, and a distinct culture made sure Scotland stood apart, strong and determined. Unlike England or Scotland, Ireland was never one united kingdom. Instead, it was made up of many rival clans, each ruled by local kings. These clans often fought each other for land, power, and honor. In the late 1100s, the English invaded Ireland, starting with support from a local Irish lord. But full control was difficult. For centuries, the English held only a small area around Dublin, called the Pale, while the rest of the island stayed Gaelic, Catholic, and independent. Over time, some English settlers stayed and formed the Anglo-Irish community, loyal to the English crown but raised in Ireland. This created a deep divide between the native Irish and these newcomers. Tensions grew, especially over land ownership, religion, and loyalty. Though England claimed power, most of Ireland remained out of reach. These early divisions would later explode into centuries of rebellion, resistance, and conflict across the island. Moving forward, let's look at how Wales became officially joined to England. In the 1500s, King Henry VIII made two huge decisions that changed British history. First, he broke away from the Catholic Church and created the Church of England, making England a Protestant country. Second, he brought Wales more tightly under English rule. Through the laws and Wales Acts, 1535 to 1542, Welsh lands were merged into the Kingdom of England. English became the official language of courts and government. Welsh people were expected to follow English laws and customs. Yet, despite pressure to assimilate, the Welsh spirit remained strong. They held on to their language, music, and religious traditions. In remote villages and mountain regions, old ways continued. Over time, Wales became legally part of England, but it never lost its identity. Even under Tudor rule, Welsh pride stayed alive, in poetry, in song, and in the deep connection to its rugged, beautiful land. Coming to the 1600s, let's explore how England and Scotland came under one crown. In 1603, Queen Elizabeth I of England died without an heir. Her cousin, James VI of Scotland, became James I of England, creating what is known as the Union of the Crowns. For the first time, one monarch ruled both England and Scotland. However, the two countries remained separate nations, each with its own parliament, laws, and traditions. This dual rule caused tension, especially when disagreements arose over religion and power. By 1707, after years of political debate and economic pressure, both parliaments agreed to the Act of Union. This law officially united the two countries into one, the Kingdom of Great Britain. They now shared a single parliament in London. Many Scots protested, feeling their independence had been lost, but others supported the union, hoping it would bring stability and trade benefits. It was a complicated union, but one that changed history forever. With all that said, let's now turn to Ireland and its long struggle under British rule. Ireland's story with Britain grew even more complicated in the 1600s. The island was mostly Catholic, while England had become Protestant. To tighten control, English and Scottish Protestants were sent to settle in Northern Ireland, especially in a region called Ulster. These settlers were given land that had belonged to native Irish families, causing deep resentment. Religious and political tensions led to rebellions, which were met with brutal crackdowns. By the late 1600s, much of Ireland was under stricter English control. In 1801, after yet another failed uprising, Britain passed the Act of Union, officially merging Ireland into the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland. But the Irish people never truly accepted British rule. Many held on to their Catholic faith, language, and a burning desire for independence, a dream that would not die. The 1800s were a time of pain for Ireland. During the Great Famine in the 1840s, over 1 million people starved to death, while British landlords continued exporting Irish food abroad. This tragedy deepened hatred and distrust of British rule. Many Irish people fled to America, but those who stayed began demanding home rule, the right to govern themselves. Some wanted peaceful change. Others believed only full independence would bring justice. In 1916, during World War I, rebels launched the Easter Rising in Dublin. The uprising failed, but it woke the nation. A few years later, a war for independence began. In 1921, most of Ireland became the Irish Free State, now called the Republic of Ireland. But Northern Ireland, where most people were Protestant and loyal to Britain, chose to remain in the United Kingdom. This created a border and left the island divided, with wounds that would take decades to heal. Now let's take a closer look at one of the darkest chapters in Northern Ireland's history. From the 1960s to the 1990s, Northern Ireland suffered through a violent and tragic time known as the Troubles. On one side were mostly Catholic nationalists who wanted Northern Ireland to join the Republic of Ireland. On the other side were mostly Protestant Unionists who wanted to remain part of the United Kingdom. What began as political tension quickly turned into deadly conflict. There were bombings, street fights, and assassinations. Neighborhoods were divided by religion, walls, and fear. British troops were sent in to restore order, but their presence often made things worse. Over 3,500 people lost their lives. But after decades of pain, peace finally came. In 1998, leaders signed the Good Friday Agreement, which allowed both sides to share power. Northern Ireland still faces challenges, but the peace holds, built on dialogue, compromise, and hope. By the late 1990s, people in Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland wanted more say in how they were governed. The UK responded by creating devolution, the process of giving power back to the individual nations. In 1998, Scotland held a referendum and voted to establish its own parliament in Edinburgh. It could now make decisions on things like education, health, and transport. Wales also gained a National Assembly, which later became the Senedd, its own Welsh parliament. Over time, it gained more power. Northern Ireland received a unique power-sharing government, giving both Protestants and Catholics a voice. Though it's been suspended at times due to disagreements, it remains a key part of the peace process. England, being the largest country, still uses the UK Parliament in London. These changes gave each nation room to protect its culture, make its own laws, and decide more of its own future. Within the UK framework, we will now delve deeper to understand Scotland's modern fight for independence. In 2014, Scotland held a historic vote. The question was simple but powerful. Should Scotland leave the United Kingdom and become an independent country? After months of debate, the people voted 55% to stay, but the result didn't end the conversation. 2 years later, in 2016, the United Kingdom voted to leave the European Union, a decision known as Brexit. However, most Scots had voted to remain in the European Union. This reignited the independence debate, as many in Scotland felt their voice had been ignored. The Scottish National Party, SNP, continues to push for a second referendum, arguing that Scotland deserves to choose its own path, especially in global matters. While some believe staying in the UK ensures economic stability, others believe independence would give Scotland the freedom to control its own future. The discussion remains alive, passionate, and deeply personal. Though Wales isn't as vocal about independence as Scotland, it remains deeply proud of its roots. The Welsh language, once suppressed, is now growing again. It's taught in schools, heard in music, and seen on road signs across the country. Welsh culture is alive in festivals, choirs, storytelling, and traditional Eisteddfod events that celebrate poetry and performance. In 1999, Wales gained its own National Assembly in Cardiff, which later became the Senedd Cymru, the Welsh Parliament. It now has power over education, health, environment, and more. While support for full independence is growing slowly, most people still prefer staying in the UK with more autonomy. What's clear is that Welsh identity has never faded. From its mountain villages to its vibrant cities, Wales holds tightly to its past while shaping its own future. In every song, school, and celebration, the message is clear. Wales is proud, resilient, and very much alive. Let's now shift our focus to England, the heart of the United Kingdom. England is the largest and most powerful of the four nations in the United Kingdom. It's home to London, the capital city, where the UK Parliament sits and major national decisions are made. England has the biggest population, the strongest economy, and the most global influence. But this central role comes with challenges. Some people ask whether England should have its own parliament, just like Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. Others wonder how England can better respect and support its smaller neighbors without overpowering them. Because while England holds much of the power, true unity requires balance, listening, and shared respect. As each nation within the UK grows more confident in its identity, England's leadership must continue evolving, not just as a ruler, but as a partner in a diverse and connected union. So where does all of this leave us? The history of England, Scotland, Ireland, and Wales is long, rich, and deeply emotional. It's a story of ancient tribes, invading empires, heroic rebellions, and struggles for identity. These nations have clashed, merged, and evolved, sometimes in peace, often in pain. And yet, through centuries of change, each one has held on to its own voice, culture, and spirit. Today, they share one union, but it's a union made up of four very different stories. You can feel those stories when walking through Dublin's old streets, climbing a Welsh mountain, exploring a Scottish castle, or standing outside Big Ben in London. It's a reminder that unity doesn't mean sameness. These nations are still figuring out how to be together, but different. And that's what makes the United Kingdom not just a country, but a living history. One still being written every single day. As we come to the end of this journey through history, one thing becomes clear. The story of England, Scotland, Ireland, and Wales is not just about the past. It's about identity, survival, and the choices that still shape the future. These four nations have experienced conflict, unity, division, and rebirth. They fought wars, signed treaties, and passed down powerful traditions. And even today, debates about independence and unity continue. Whether they stand together or walk separate paths in the future, their shared history will always bind them in some way. Each land speaks with its own voice, but together, they tell one of the most fascinating stories in the world. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more content like this. What part of this story surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments below. And remember, history isn't just about kings and wars, it's about people, identity, and the future we all share. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.